because you're not with Republic anymore. You were with Republic for 2 records.
Yeah.
And now you're independent. Would you say that, what was the experience like on a major label? And are you guys looking for another major label? Is this something that you have a good experience? Like, what do you recommend in these situations? Like, what was it like to be on a major?
I think at the time, and this is an answer that is much more appropriate for Zach and John to answer,
Sure.
but I suppose being a participant in it, my personal takeaway was, at the time that happens, you think, this is incredible. Like, this is a bigger machine that has much more of a larger footprint and impression and ability to just kind of like...
And infrastructure.
To just get this out there. Yeah.
Big
and
team.
I really had no idea. I mean, I knew that the first record that we put out, we had a decent amount of placements, and I had thought that was going to be something that was going to...
sync placements, like TV
sync placements,
stuff.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember thinking, oh, well, if we're on the major stuff, then we will get even more of that.
Right.
It was interesting that we didn't. And I think that was because where we would normally say yes to an amount that would come our way, the label wanted more.
Oh, yeah, they would price you high. So it was like, right. I mean, normal like indie placements coming through $5,000-$10,000.
Sure.
Like, that's amazing for an indie band.
For us, we're like, well, that's more than we had yesterday. So
right. Yes,
where do we sign? And then,
right, but majors, they're going to want 50, 60, 70, 80.
Something.
Yeah. Oh,
Too
they won't
much.
go below that. Right.
Yeah. And I think that, I don't know if that turns off the music supervisor people. Like, no, we're not going to ask them. Or if it's like dealing with it seemed like a lot of things in the major would just take longer than necessary. And there was a lot of people, there's like a committee of people that had to approve of certain things. And, for a lot of that era, none of that really had anything to do with me. It's not like I was having to make any judgment calls or
well, you saw you'd film like a little behind the scenes video, and whereas before you could just pop it on your YouTube.
Exactly.
This time, you had to get approval from the label.
There was like lawyers that were always on CC.
Oh, wow.
and approval for clearance of the ability to upload something to YouTube, to the writer's credits and blah, blah, blah. On one hand, it was great because they certainly have the relationships for radio. Like, there was a single that came out, and they would do the whole schmooze thing with the program directors in different markets, and they were tracking like which radio stations were picking it up, and they certainly had the strong relationships with like Rolling Stone or other blogs that would write about stuff.
Sure.
And I don't remember if they had anything to do with when we got on some of the other late night stuff, because we did another kind of round of things when the second record came out.
Sure.
But they certainly had their positive influence.
Okay.
But I think that to a certain extent, it also just wasn't. I don't know. I think they did give us some freedom that we were very thankful for. And I mean, for example, making the second record, that we didn't know at the time how or where or when we were going to make the second record. We had kind of exhausted the touring behind the first one, and shortly after moving here to Nashville, I popped down to Austin to start writing the next one, because the label was like, "Yo, what are you guys up to? What's next?"
Yeah.
And so we just slapped some mics up and made kind of a demo recording of I think it was Midnight Hour might have been one of the songs, and we just kind of like sent it off to the A&R guy, and he's like, "Man, whatever you're doing and however you're doing it and wherever you're doing it, this sounds great. Keep doing that."
Oh, cool.
And that essential quote unquote demo is what wound up making it actually on the record itself.
Fun.
And so thankfully, what major label gives a band carte blanche to make a record in a farmhouse in Austin, however they want, with no actual producer?
That sounds great, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit, as in what they did to your first record, which they kind of made you re-record 3 of the best songs on the record with a producer you didn't know in a very expensive studio. Yes. And those recordings, in my opinion, were the magic was stripped away from what the original recordings were on Utah, that magic that you had from that cabin. And now you had this like sheen sounding recording that didn't quite have the beauty, and the soul and the magic that the first ones did, and that was kind of what they forced on you a little bit, right?
Yeah. That.
So maybe everyone learned their lesson from that. You're like, that wasn't a good move. Let them do what they do best.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah. And I don't know whose idea it was to pick that producer and pick that studio and stuff. I mean, who knows? It could have been. I know that there was like a chat with Rick Rubin to have him do some stuff. And that didn't quite pan out. And there was a couple other producers. And I mean, there were some people that we certainly had on our list that we wished would have done it. And for whatever reason, that didn't line up. And then when it shook out with who it shook out with, it wasn't necessarily the right fit. And I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
I do think that there are certainly people that are equally as loyal fans now that discovered us as a result of being a part of the major machine.
Sure.
And to me, a loyal fan who is a supporter of what we do, and they spend their hard-earned money, and they really kind of shout from the top of the mountain on our behalf. Like, I am thankful and appreciative of each and every single one of those people.